Beneath Utah's vast deserts, red rock canyons, and endless skies lie secrets carved in stone and whispered by the wind. From vanished civilizations and cryptic petroglyphs to lost mines and ghostly ruins, this land holds mysteries that have endured for centuries. These are stories of wonder, legends, and unanswered questions, echoes of the past that still linger in Utah's ancient landscapes. Music, the Anastasia disappearance, long before Europeans ever set foot on the continent of North America. In the rugged deserts, canyons, and high plateaus of what we now call Utah, Colorado, Arizona, and New Mexico, an extraordinary civilization flourished. Archaeologists call them the ancestral Puebloans, though for centuries, they were better known by another name, the Anatsi. For nearly 1,000 years, these people carved out an existence in a land that seems almost impossible to tame. Their world was one of stark contrasts: searing heat in summer, freezing cold in winter, scarce water, and land that yielded little to farmers. And yet, against all odds, they built a society that rivaled some of the greatest ancient cultures of the world. They were not merely survivors. They were builders, visionaries, and thinkers. They designed sprawling stone dwellings that clung to the faces of sheer cliffs, some with hundreds of interconnected rooms. They carved ceremonial chambers known as kiyas, circular spaces sunk into the earth where their people gathered for rituals, storytelling, and connection to the spiritual world. They engineered irrigation canals that carried precious water to their fields of corn, beans, and squash, the crops that sustained them generation after generation. And across miles of unforgiving terrain, they constructed straight roads whose precision defies explanation even today. At the heart of their world stood places like Cho Canyon in present-day New Mexico. Here, their culture reached astonishing heights. Towering multi-story buildings known as great houses rose from the desert floor, constructed with tens of thousands of sandstone blocks carefully shaped and set in place. Some of these massive structures contained hundreds of rooms and rose 4 or 5 stories high. Even more remarkable, many were built with a cosmic order in mind. Their windows and doorways aligned with the rising and setting of the sun on solstices and equinoxes. To build in such harmony with the sky required generations of careful observation. Evidence that astronomy was not merely science for the Anastasia, but a deeply spiritual endeavor. In Utah, their presence can still be felt in haunting ruins that cling to cliffs and mesas. In places like Cedar Mesa, Bears' Ears, and along the winding canyons of the San Juan River, dwellings perched precariously high above the desert floor. Standing beneath these structures, it is impossible not to marvel at the determination it took to build them. Every stone had to be hauled up sheer walls. Every jug of water, every bundle of firewood, every ear of corn had to be carried by hand. Life here demanded extraordinary resilience, but it also offered protection. For these lofty dwellings were not just homes. They may also have been fortresses, sanctuaries against threats from below. For centuries, their society thrived. The population of the Four Corners region may have reached into the tens of thousands. Their pottery painted with intricate designs spoke of a people with refined artistic traditions. Their textiles and woven baskets revealed extraordinary craftsmanship. And their rock art, spirals, animals, and mysterious figures etched into stone hinted at a worldview deeply tied to both the land and the heavens. By all appearances, they were a people well adapted to their environment. And then something happened. By the late 1200s, their great cities, their cliff dwellings, and their farmlands fell silent. Fires and hearths were extinguished. Granaries were abandoned, sometimes with food still inside. Pottery lay broken on the floors of once busy homes. One by one, entire communities vanished. leaving behind only ruins. To the archaeologists who came centuries later, it became one of the great mysteries of the American Southwest. How could such a resilient people disappear so suddenly? One of the leading theories is climate. Studies of ancient tree rings, a science called dendrochronology, reveal that the late 1200s brought one of the most severe droughts in centuries. For decades, rainfall all but ceased. Streams and springs dried up. For a people whose survival depended on farming, such a drought would have been devastating. Entire villages may have been forced to abandon their homes, seeking more fertile ground elsewhere. But drought alone does not tell the whole story. Archaeological evidence suggests that these years of hardship may have also brought conflict. Excavations at certain sites reveal signs of burned buildings, not caused by accident, but deliberate destruction. Human remains show evidence of violent deaths, fractured skulls, arrow wounds, even beheadings, and in a few controversial cases, bones bear marks suggesting cannibalism, evidence perhaps of extreme desperation in times of famine. If food and water grew scarce, it is not difficult to imagine once cooperative neighbors turning against one another. Villages may have raided each other for resources. Wars may have been fought over the few springs that still trickled with water. The placement of cliff dwellings so high, so defensible, begins to look less like a choice of convenience and more like a necessity born of fear. And yet, even this theory cannot fully explain the disappearance. Another possibility is migration. Many Native American tribes today, including the Hopi, the Zori, and the Acoma, claim direct descent from the ancestral Pueblones. Their oral traditions tell of great journeys of leaving behind the old homes when the spirits instructed them to move on. In this telling, the Anastasia did not vanish. They transformed, spreading their culture across new lands. What seems to us like an abrupt end may in truth have been a purposeful journey guided by spiritual beliefs. Still, the question lingers. Why leave behind entire regions so completely? Why did no one ever return to rebuild? Some researchers suggest that answers might be found in the Anastasia spiritual world. Their rock art contains enigmatic figures, spirals that some interpret as symbols of migration or perhaps even portals between worlds. Strange beings with elongated bodies and enormous eyes appear on canyon walls. Visions of gods, spirits, or something far stranger. To stand before these petroglyphs in the canyons of Utah is to wonder whether the Anatsi recorded visions, celestial events, or perhaps encounters that defy modern explanation. Perhaps it was not only drought or conflict that drove them away, but a deep belief that their time in these places had come to an end. For a people who viewed the world as alive with spiritual meaning, such a belief would have been just as powerful as any natural disaster. In the end, the truth may lie in a combination of all these forces: drought, famine, violence, migration, and belief intertwining to shape one of history's great transformations. The Anatsi may not have disappeared at all, but instead adapted, leaving their monumental cities behind for smaller, more sustainable communities. Their descendants are with us today, their traditions still echoing with the voices of their ancestors. And yet, the ruins remain silent, haunting. Walk among the stone dwellings of Mesa Verde or beneath the hidden palaces of Bear's Ears, and you cannot escape a feeling of presence. You see handprints painted on walls, pressed there by people centuries ago, as if to reach across time to remind us we were here. The wind sighs through empty doorways. Shadows stretch across walls where families once lived, laughed, prayed, and dreamed. The silence is powerful because within it, the questions remain unanswered. What truly happened to the Anastasia? Were they undone by the cruelty of nature, by the brutality of human conflict, or by choices rooted in spiritual conviction? Perhaps all three. What we do know is this: their story endures. It is not only a tale of disappearance, but of survival and transformation, a reminder that even the greatest civilizations are fragile in the face of nature's power. A lesson in resilience, adaptation, and the enduring strength of the human spirit. Today, the descendants of the ancestral Pueblones continue their traditions, their ceremonies, and their connection to the land. They carry forward the living legacy of a people who never truly vanished. And for those of us who gaze upon the empty dwellings, who run our hands along stones placed with care centuries ago, the mystery lingers, a mystery whispered on the desert wind, written in the silent ruins, and etched forever into the story of Utah and into the ancient history of the world. Music, newspaper, rock petroglyphs. Deep in the red rock canyons of southeastern Utah, just off a winding desert road that cuts into the heart of Indian Creek, there is a wall of sandstone that has captured human imagination for centuries. At first glance, it seems unremarkable. Just another sun-darkened cliff face stained by desert varnish formed over thousands of years. But step closer and the stone reveals itself. Its surface is alive with figures, symbols, and carvings. This is newspaper rock. Spread across more than 200 square feet is a breathtaking collage of petroglyphs. Images chipped and etched into stone by countless hands over nearly 2,000 years. Animals leap across the rock. Deer, bighorn sheep, and telepee. Hunters appear with bows drawn. Human figures stretch their arms skyward. Spirals curl inward. Circles twist into strange geometric patterns. And scattered among them are shapes more mysterious forms that resist easy recognition. It is one of the largest single collections of petroglyphs in the entire Southwest. Yet despite its size, despite its detail, its true meaning remains cloaked in mystery. For the Navajo, the UTI, and the PBLO peoples, this is not just art. It is memory. It is story. It is message. The Hopi call such carvings the writings of the people. To modernize newspaper rock looks like a bulletin board carved across centuries. Layer after layer of human expression, each voice adding to the last. That nickname newspaper rock comes from this resemblance. But unlike a modern newspaper, there are no headlines, no dates, no neat organization. Instead, images overlap and intermingle. A spiral cuts through an animal. A human figure shares space with a set of footprints. It is a collage where each new voice joined the chorus without erasing what came before. Archaeologists believe the earliest carvings may have been made nearly 2 millennia ago, perhaps by the ancestral Pueblones. Later, the Fremont people left their marks. Then the Navajo, the UTI, and others who passed through this canyon. Each generation added to the wall until the surface became what it is today. A palimpsest of human history, stretching across centuries. Some images seem easy enough to interpret. Hunters chasing bighorn sheep may record successful hunts. Footprints could mark travel routes or perhaps claim territory. Spirals and circles might represent the sun, the passage of seasons, or migration paths. But beyond these familiar shapes are stranger carvings. Cryptic beings with triangular bodies and elongated limbs. Creatures that appear half animal, half human, and abstract designs so unusual they seem almost otherworldly. What were these meant to convey? Were they spiritual visions captured by shamans in altered states of mind? Were they warnings or maps? Or are we, in our modern perspective, simply unable to see the meaning that was once obvious? One theory suggests newspaper rock was a traveler's message board. Indian Creek formed a natural corridor through the desert, a route for hunters, traders, and migrating families. Perhaps those who passed by left marks to say, "We were here." a prehistoric guest book etched in stone. Another theory imagines it as a ceremonial site, a sacred wall where spiritual leaders recorded visions, moments of contact with the unseen world. And then there are the more mysterious interpretations. Some researchers point to the strange humanoid shapes, figures with large eyes, long limbs, or unusual bodies, and ask whether they could represent encounters with something beyond human gods. Spirits, visitors from the sky. Most archaeologists dismiss such ideas as modern fantasy. But the images themselves invite speculation. And it is this sense of mystery that gives newspaper rock its power. The layering of the petroglyphs only deepens that mystery. Unlike modern graffiti, where one artist often covers another, here the images coexist. Centuries of carvings overlap but rarely erase. It is as if each new generation respected what was already there, adding their voices to a conversation that never truly ended. Imagine trying to read a newspaper where every issue for nearly 2,000 years was printed on the same page in the same space. That is newspaper rock. Not a single story, but thousands layered, intertwined, and almost impossible to separate. Science, for all its tools, cannot fully unlock its secrets. Carbon dating cannot reveal when a carving was made. Archaeologists can estimate based on style or on the cultures known to have lived in the area at different times. But certainty is rare. In many ways, the rock refuses easy answers. And perhaps that is as it should be. For native peoples of the region, these images are not meant to be explained to outsiders. Many believe they hold sacred meaning, knowledge that belongs to those descended from the ones who carved them. To them, newspaper rock is not a puzzle for scholars, but a living link to ancestors, a reminder of traditions that endure even today. For visitors, though, the experience is different. To stand before newspaper rock is to feel time collapse. You realize that for thousands of years, human beings stood in this very spot, staring at this same wall of stone, deciding to leave a mark that would outlast them. It forces a question. What message did they hope to send across the centuries? Perhaps the deeper question is not what they meant, but why we feel compelled to know. Why do we in the 21st century stare at these symbols and try to decipher them? Maybe it is because they reflect something universal. The human need to tell stories, to record our lives, to leave behind a trace that says, I was here. Yet, they also remind us of how fragile memory is. For every recognizable hunter or animal, there are symbols whose meanings are forever lost. Without the oral traditions of those who carved them, without the voices of the people who knew, we are left with silence. And so, newspaper rock remains what it has always been. A mystery written in stone. A message board across time that refuses to give up its secrets. A reminder that the past is never as silent as we think. It whispers through symbols. It echoes through canyons. It waits for us to listen. When you finally walk away, the rock lingers in your imagination. The images follow you, haunting, suggestive. They raise unsettling questions. When future generations look back at us, at our symbols, our words, our messages, will they understand them or will they puzzle over us the way we puzzle over the past? Newspaper rock teaches us something vital. Stories can endure for thousands of years, carved deep into stone, and yet their meanings can slip away, as fragile as sand carried by desert wind. Perhaps that is the greatest lesson of all, that the mystery is not meant to be solved. It is meant to be felt. The Fremont culture's vanishing, in the heart of Utah's rugged deserts and winding canyons. Long before pioneers arrived and long before European maps gave names to this land, there lived a people who thrived in silence and shadow. Today, Archaeologists call them the Fremont culture. But the truth is, we don't know what they called themselves. We don't know their language. We don't know their names. What we have are fragments, stone tools, clay figurines, faded rock art, and the husks of forgotten villages. For centuries, these people lived side by side with their better-known neighbors, the ancestral Puebloans. While the Ploins raised mighty cliff dwellings and great houses in places like Mesa Verde and Chaco Canyon, the Fremont lived in smaller scattered communities across Utah's valleys, riverbanks, and canyon lands. They were farmers, hunters, and gatherers, building pit houses dug into the earth, storing corn in stone granaries tucked high into cliffs and shaping a way of life uniquely adapted to the harsh desert. And then they disappeared. The Fremont culture blossomed between about 300 and 300 CE. During that 1,000 years, they carved out a society that seems at once familiar and mysterious. Their homes were simple but practical. Subterranean lodges roofed with wood and brush, keeping cool in the desert heat and warm in the bitter winters. These homes often sat near rivers or streams where families tended small fields of maize, beans, and squash. But unlike the Puebloans, the Fremont never became entirely dependent on agriculture. They balanced farming with foraging, gathering roots, seeds, and nuts, and hunting deer, rabbits, and bighorn sheep. This flexibility may have been their strength and perhaps also their undoing. One of their most striking legacies is their rock art. Recent discoveries in the Amazon rainforest have revealed complex geometric patterns visible only from above. These precisely aligned structures dating back over 2,000 years suggest ancient civilizations possess sophisticated engineering knowledge that challenges our understanding of pre-Columbian societies. How did they achieve such precision? Gods or spirits? Or simply the way the Fremont saw themselves? They also left behind small clay figurines, stylized human shapes with carefully carved details. Some are adorned with necklaces, others with intricate headgear. Archaeologists aren't sure what they were used for. Were they children's toys, fertility symbols, ritual objects? Like so much of Fremont culture, the answer has been lost. What we do know is that around the late 1200s, the Fremont vanished. Their patoos were abandoned. Their granaries, once stocked with corn, were left empty. Their art stopped appearing on canyon walls. And unlike the Ploins, who evolved into modern tribes like the Hopi and Zoni, the Fremont seemed to have melted away, their identity dissolving into the landscape. So, what happened? The most obvious explanation is climate. Like their neighbors, the Fremont depended on fragile desert agriculture. And like the Puebloans, they faced the same devastating droughts that swept across the Southwest in the 1200s. Tree ring data shows decades when rainfall nearly vanished. In such conditions, crops withered, streams dried up, and entire communities would have struggled to survive. But drought may not tell the whole story. The Fremont were never as heavily reliant on farming as the Puebloans. They were skilled hunters and gatherers, more flexible, more able to move with the seasons. Could climate alone have erased them? Another possibility is conflict. Evidence from some Fremont sites shows signs of violence. Burned homes, scattered bones, fortifications hastily built on high ground. The late 1200s were a turbulent time in the region with competition for food and water growing fierce. It's possible that Fremont groups were attacked, absorbed, or displaced by stronger neighbors. Some may have been drawn into the orbit of migrating Puebloan groups, losing their identity in the process. And then there's the question of assimilation. Some archaeologists believe the Fremont didn't vanish at all, but gradually merged with surrounding cultures. Bits of Fremont style show up in later native groups of Utah and the Great Basin. suggesting their descendants lived on, but under new names and new traditions. If true, then the Fremont weren't lost. They simply changed. Still, mysteries remain. Why did their art stop so suddenly? Why do their figurines, once common, disappear completely? Why do their settlements fall silent across such a wide area? Standing in a place like Range Creek Canyon, one of the most pristine Fremont sites ever discovered, you can feel the weight of these questions. They're high in the cliffs, untouched granaries, still clinging to the rock. Inside them, archaeologists have found corn cobs more than 700 years old, preserved in the dry desert air. It's as if the people left in a hurry, expecting to return, but never did. The canyon is littered with ghostly traces, stone tools, pottery shards, hunting blinds, but no clear answer to the mystery. And perhaps the most haunting thing of all is the silence. Unlike the ancestral Puebloans, who are remembered through the oral traditions of their descendants, the Fremont left behind no direct voices. Their name itself comes from the Fremont River in Utah, named centuries later by European explorers. We don't know what they called themselves. We don't know the stories they told around their fires. We don't know how they explained the world or what their gods demanded of them. Archaeologists believe that Fremont society was never centralized. Instead of great cities, they lived in scattered family groups or small villages, each adjusting to the land in their own way. This may explain why their culture is so difficult to trace without a unified identity. The Fremont may have splintered and scattered when times grew hard. Some joined neighboring tribes. Some moved west into the Great Basin. Others perhaps faded into isolation. The culture dissolved like sand carried away by the wind. Yet, despite their disappearance, their presence lingers. The trapezoid figures carved into stone. The silent granaries perched above the desert floor. The tiny figurines buried in the soil. All whisper of a people who once thrived where survival itself was a daily battle. And so the vanishing of the Fremont culture remains one of Utah's greatest mysteries. Did drought and famine break them? Did war consume them? Did they walk away willingly, blending into other tribes until their name was forgotten? Or were they following some path we can't begin to imagine, guided by beliefs we'll never know? Whatever the answer, the Fremont remind us of how fragile a culture can be. For 1,000 years, they endured, in one of the harshest landscapes in North America, carving out a life with ingenuity, resilience, and artistry. And then, in what feels like the blink of an eye, they were gone. Today, when you hike through Utah's canyons and stumble upon a petroglyph panel, when you stand beneath the trapezoid figures etched into stone, you are face to face with that mystery. You are looking at the last whispers of a people who lived, dreamed, and disappeared, leaving only their shadows behind. And perhaps that is the greatest truth of the Fremont story. They never really vanished. They are still here in the rock, in the soil, in the silent granaries watching over the desert. They are here in the unanswered questions, in the wonder of those who search for them. They speak in silence, waiting for us to listen. Music, the lost road is mine. High in the rugged mountains of central Utah, where the Wasatch Peaks rise like stone sentinels above dark forests and twisting canyons, there lives a legend that has haunted treasure hunters for more than a century. It is the story of a lost mine, a hidden vein of unimaginable wealth, a place said to contain gold so pure and so plentiful that it could alter the fate of anyone fortunate enough to find it. This is the mystery of the Lost Rhodes. The tale begins in the mid-1800s, in the turbulent years after Mormon pioneers carved their settlements into the harsh Utah landscape. Among these settlers was a man named Thomas Royce. He was no ordinary pioneer. He was a scout, a frontiersman, and above all a man of secrets. trusted by the highest leadership of the Mormon Church. Thomas carried with him knowledge of something that others desperately desired: the existence of rich deposits of gold hidden deep within the mountains. According to the story, Thomas Rodu was granted special permission by native tribes, most often said to be the UTI. The land was sacred to them, off-limits to outsiders. But Thomas, it is said, earned their trust. Some versions claim he was even guided to the site of an ancient mine, a place that predated the Mormon settlers by centuries. When Rodawas returned from his expeditions, he did not bring back scattered nuggets or dust like so many prospectors of the age. Instead, he carried chunks of extraordinary purity, gold so flawless that assayers marveled at it, gold that jewelers scarcely believed could exist in nature. The Mormon Church, facing hardship in its early years, quietly benefited from this treasure. Coins were minted, debts were paid, and survival was secured, all without ever disclosing the true origin of this mysterious wealth. But the location itself, Thomas kept guarded. The legend says he swore an oath bound both to his faith and to his agreements with the native people that he would never reveal the site. For years, he honored this oath. Friends spoke of his long absences into the wilderness. Weeks would pass, and then he would emerge tired, worn, but with saddlebags that gleamed with fortune. There are whispers that he once took church leaders to the site, allowing them to extract only what was necessary before concealing the entrance again beneath stone and earth. As time wore on, the weight of the secret grew heavier. In his final days, weakened and nearing death, Thomas is said to have passed the knowledge to his son, Caleb Ruditz. If Thomas was cautious, Caleb was bold. Where his father had honored discretion, Caleb courted fortune. He is said to have ventured into the mountains repeatedly, returning with more of the fabled gold. His confidence stirred curiosity, but also suspicion. Some accused him of betraying his father's oath. Others whispered that Caleb never truly knew the location, that he relied on scattered caches or fragments of memory, fooling others with grand stories. The Mormon Church, wary of controversy and conscious of its promises to the native people, chose distance. The gold was quietly set aside, and when Caleb died, the trail went cold. The secret slipped once more into the shadows of the mountains. That was more than a century ago. Since then, the Uintas and Wasatch Ranges have become the hunting ground of dreamers. Treasure seekers scoured cliffs, combed valleys, and crawled into caves, convinced that the road's legacy was hidden just out of reach. Some swore they had seen strange carvings, Spanish crosses etched into stone, arrows pointing towards secret passages, or the initials PR standing as cryptic markers. Others whispered of a mine sealed behind an impenetrable wall of rock, deliberately hidden so it would never again be touched. The legends splintered into countless variations. Some claimed it was once a Spanish treasure mine carved by conquistadors in their relentless pursuit of gold. They forced native people into brutal labor, extracting vast riches until rebellion sealed the tunnels forever in blood. Others believed it was not Spanish at all, but wholly native, a sacred site that should never have been revealed to outsiders. And still others went further, declaring the mine cursed. Anyone who sought it, they warned, would face ruin. The cursed stories multiplied. Treasure hunters claimed to be stalked in the night. Some said they heard voices calling through the forests or saw symbols freshly carved into trees. Warnings to leave. A few disappeared without a trace. Others returned empty-handed, speaking of sudden storms or strange strangers who turned them back. And yet, the lure of gold is difficult to silence. Even today, with modern technology at their disposal, drones, mapping software, metal detectors, Seekers continue to climb into the remote canyons of the Yumas, chasing whispers of treasure. Rumors surface every so often of small caches discovered, of veins of quartz laced with gold. But the great motherlode, the heart of the road is mine, has never been revealed. Why has the secret endured so long? Perhaps because it is more than just a story of wealth. To the native tribes of Utah, the mountains remain sacred, places of reverence rather than plunder. To the Mormon pioneers, the legend is tied to survival and secrecy, a symbol of resilience in a harsh land. And to treasure hunters, it represents the eternal hope that fortune lies just beyond the next ridge. Skeptics, of course, dismiss it entirely. They argue that the gold was never from a single mine. Perhaps Thomas Royce traded for it with native people. Or perhaps he drew it from scattered deposits that were quickly exhausted. Some historians believe the tale grew with each telling, transforming modest truth into enduring myth. But if you stand among the high valleys of the Uintas, with their endless forests and shadowed canyons, it is not difficult to imagine a secret waiting just out of sight. These mountains are vast, riddled with caves and cliffs, a labyrinth where a hidden mind could easily sleep undisturbed for centuries. The wilderness guards its mysteries well, and so the legend survives. The Lost Road Mine is more than a treasure hunt. It has become a ghost story, cautionary tale, and a symbol of humanity's endless chase after fortune and mystery. Each year, new seekers venture into the wilderness, convinced that they will be the ones to break the code, to read the carvings correctly, to uncover what Thomas Rhodes once knew. But the mine, if it exists, remains hidden. Perhaps it was sealed forever by those who believed it should never again see daylight. Perhaps it lies waiting for one chosen discoverer, the soul destined to change history. Or perhaps the true treasure was never the gold at all, but the story itself, a tale that gleams brighter with every retelling, binding Utah's mountains to one of the West's most enduring mysteries. The Lost Roads Mine is not simply a question of stone and metal. It is a reminder of how legend and history intertwine, how faith and greed, secrecy and survival can shape the stories we tell. And as long as the mountains stand, as long as dreamers believe in hidden fortunes, the legend will endure, glittering just out of reach. Somewhere in the shadow of Utah's peaks, the ghostly towers of Huvup, in the lonely desert canyons straddling the Utah-Colorado border, the land feels ancient. Red cliffs rise against an endless sky. Silence presses in from every side, and the wind carries whispers that seem older than time itself. It is here, in this barren but hauntingly beautiful landscape, that a mystery of stone still lingers. Scattered across the mesa and canyon rims stand towers. Stone towers, some square, some round, some oddly D-shaped that were built more than 700 years ago. Today, they are ruins crumbling yet defiant, their walls scarred by centuries of wind and sun. But once they rose proudly above the desert, built with a precision that seems almost impossible for the time. This place is called Hovenweep, a name taken from a Utig word meaning deserted valley. And it is here that one of Utah's great mysteries resides: the ghostly towers. Their purpose still uncertain, their silence still unbroken. The people who built these structures were the ancestral Pueblones, often called the Anasazi. By the 1200s, they had lived in the Four Corners region for centuries, farming the harsh desert land, raising crops of corn, beans, and squash, and weaving their lives into the rhythm of the sun and seasons. But here at Hovenweep, they created something unique. Stone towers unlike anything else in the region. There are more than 100 of them, scattered across 6 different sites. Some are perched precariously on the very edges of cliffs. Others stand isolated in the middle of dry washes or tucked against boulders as if hiding secrets. They range from small watchtower-sized buildings to multi-story giants. Their masonry is extraordinary. Tightly fitted sandstone blocks, carefully shaped and stacked, forming walls that have endured for centuries. But why were they built? That is the question that haunts Hoven Weep. Archaeologists have debated the purpose of these towers for decades. Some believe they were defensive fortifications built during times of drought and conflict. In the 1200s, as resources grew scarce and tensions rose, perhaps the towers were used as watch points, places to guard against raiders or protect precious food stores. Their placement on cliffs and ridges certainly suggests vigilance, as if their builders were keeping watch over both land and people. Others see them as ceremonial structures. The ancestral Pueblones had a deep spiritual connection to the cosmos. Some towers align with the movements of the sun and moon, marking solstices and lunar standstills. Could these have been observatories, places where priests or shamans tracked celestial events, guiding rituals and agricultural cycles? If so, the towers may have served as both spiritual and practical tools, bridges between heaven and earth. And then there are those who believe the towers were storehouses or symbols of community power. Grain could have been kept safe inside their thick stone walls, protected from rodents and moisture. Or perhaps they stood as monuments, declaring the strength and permanence of the people who built them. But the truth is, no single explanation fits all the towers. Some may have been watchtowers, others observatories, still others granaries or shrines. Each one might have carried multiple meanings, its purpose shifting with time and need. What is clear is that they were important. These were not casual constructions. They took planning, labor, and vision. They mattered deeply to the people who built them. And then they were abandoned. By the late 1200s, the towers of Hoven Weep, like so many ancestral Pueblo and sites, fell silent. The people who built them left just as their neighbors did at Mesa Verde, Chaco Canyon, and countless other settlements across the Southwest. The droughts of the time were severe, lasting decades, crippling agriculture, and forcing families to move in search of survival. Violence too may have played a role. Competition for food and water sparking conflicts that left communities vulnerable. Whatever the cause, by the early 1300s, the towers of Hoven Weep were empty, their stone walls left to face the desert winds alone. The people migrated south and east, becoming the ancestors of modern Pueblo tribes such as the Hopi and Zuni. But the towers remained silent witnesses to a vanished way of life. Today, to walk among the ruins of Hoven Weep is to step into that silence. The desert seems to hold its breath around you. The towers rise against the sky, their windows and doorways staring blankly out at the horizon. Ravens circle above, their cries echoing off canyon walls. And in the quiet, you feel the weight of the unknown. Who stood guard in these towers? Who lit fires in their hearths? Who gazed at the stars from their rooftops, charting the heavens with eyes sharpened by belief? Their voices are gone, but their stone remains. Some visitors speak of a presence here, a sense of being watched. Perhaps it's just the eerie shape of the towers themselves, standing like sentinels over the canyon. Or perhaps it's something deeper, a lingering spirit of the people who once called this place home. Legends abound. Some say the towers were built not just for defense or ceremony, but as beacons for the spirit world, guiding ancestors or calling down powers from the sky. Others whisper that the towers hide secrets still undiscovered, buried chambers, sealed caches of sacred objects, perhaps even the remains of those who built them. And then there are those who believe the towers are haunted. Night visitors tell of strange lights glowing in the windows, of footsteps echoing on the stones when no one is there, of whispers carried on the desert wind. Whether these are tricks of imagination or echoes of something more, the effect is undeniable. Hovet feels alive even in its emptiness. Archaeologists continue to study the towers, piecing together their history from pottery shards, stone tools, and the alignment of their walls. Each discovery brings us closer to understanding. Yet, the ultimate question, why, remains elusive. Perhaps it always will. Perhaps the true meaning of Hovenfly is beyond our reach, locked in a cultural language that vanished centuries ago. But maybe that's the point. Maybe the towers are meant to remain mysterious, reminding us of the resilience and ingenuity of the ancestral Pueblones while also humbling us with the limits of our knowledge. They are both monuments and mysteries, standing at the edge of history like sentinels guarding secrets we can only guess at. When you leave Hoven Weep, the image stays with you. Stone towers rising against the endless desert sky. Alone yet enduring. They are ruins, yes, but also reminders that human effort, human belief, human vision can outlast centuries. That even when voices fade and people vanish, their presence lingers in stone. The ghostly towers of Hovenweep remain, silent but unyielding, telling us in their own way that the past is never truly gone. It waits for us in the desert, in the wind, in the stone, and in the mysteries we may never solve.